morning. This is Master Chief McAdams underneath the shadow of Yaquina Head Lighthouse. I used to be in charge of this lighthouse here, and many stories came out from around this lighthouse. Now, this lighthouse here, which we'll show you later, one of the stories of it, they were going to do a Nancy Drew series, and they had the two gals that were there going to do the part there, and one of them was just starting her career as an actress. Her name was Pamela Sue Martin, who after this series went into one of the programs there and became quite famous doing soap operas. Anyway, they contacted us and they said, well, we're going to do this movie, and I said, well, you have to have permission through the Coast Guard headquarters and etc. And they went and got all the permission and all the papers and everything all filled out and came back to the station and said, we'll be there and so date, and we're going to do this film, and we'll be filming it over 3 or 4 days, and the picture calls for the lighthouse to be abandoned and all streaks of rust and glob coming on down it. Well, we had just painted it not long ago, and the lighthouse really looked pretty good, so they got permission that they could use watercolor paint, but they didn't say that they were going to use the watercolor paint that we have now that is as good as any enamel paint and it don't wash off. And they came out and they sprayed it. They got a truck and they sprayed up and down the lighthouse and this brown gooky paint, and it really made the lighthouse look horrible. And then they said, now what we want to do, we want to get the pictures of the two girls, Pamela Sue Martin and the other girl that was playing. We want them as out to sea in a small boat. And so we took them on a 44-footer. And of course we had the crew on board with all their batteries and all their slides and all their screens and everything. So I had a boatload of people on the 44-footer. And of course I used to smoke a cigar, and I was going out, I was smoking a cigar, and finally the director, he came up to me and he said, Chief, he said, would you mind putting the cigar out? He said, you're getting my whole crew seasick. And I said, no, I don't bother. I didn't think about it, and I did. But by this time, all his crew were pretty well basically seasick. And we came around the point there, and we came out to sea, out to here, and we got the two girls sitting on the bow of the boat, and that's all they took a picture of, was the two girls in the lighthouse. It was about a 15-second shot that took probably 3 hours to complete. And when we got back to the station, none of their crew felt too good, and they all got off the boat and started up the ramp. And I said, hold it. And they all stopped, and they said, what's the matter there, Chief? And I said, you got all your gear, you got all these battery packs, you got all these screens, you got all these tripods. I said, we got to get them off the boat. And they said, well, we can't do that. We said, we got to have a union crew do that, and they'll be around in a couple hours. I said, no. I said, this boat's a search and rescue boat, and it's ready to go in a moment. And if I get a call, I can't go with all this stuff on the deck. So as I go out between the jetties, I'll have to throw it all overboard. And they said, well, you can't do that. There's thousands and thousands of dollars. I said, well, if everybody would just grab one piece and take it up the ramp, I said, the job will be done. And the director says, well, we don't want to lose it. Would everybody get in and work with them? And they all said, yeah. So everybody grabbed their gear, and we got the boat cleared off and that. And it was Pamela Sue Martin. It was her birthday. And they all met down at Moe's Chowder restaurant later on that evening. And we went on down, and most of them got over their seasick by that time, and they kind of had a little celebration for her birthday at the time. But anyway, so the lighthouse now is all stained, it's all terrible shape, and so we said, well, what we're going to do? And they did the picture of the filming, and it was a smuggling operation, and the two girls on the boat spotted the lights in their flickering lights in the lighthouse, and they called the police, and they checked over and said, yeah, that's a smuggling operation. And so they had the FBI come and the regular police come, and they made a raid on the lighthouse, and they caught all the bad guys, of course, and the picture ended, and they said, okay, fine, everything is over with, we're leaving. I said, well, wait a minute. And they had this machine that you took corn cobs, and you put the corn cobs in the machine, and it ground them up and made dust, and that's how they made dust in the movie. And going up this lighthouse, I forget how many steps there are, but there's something like 200 steps that are going up to the lighthouse, to the top of where the lens is, and it was all covered with this dust, about an inch of this dust. So when they filmed inside, it looked like an abandoned lighthouse, and there'd be footprints in the dust and that. And then they took the machine, it was like a cotton candy machine that makes spider webs. And that's why you see in the movies all these huge spider webs all over the place. And they put spider on the lower deck was just covered with spider webs all over the place. And they walked off, and here's this lighthouse now completely covered in dust and these fake spider webs. So I called the district, and they said, well, you've reduced the light, and it's supposed to be 19 miles to 20 miles that you can see it at sea, and you'll have to clean everything on up, and you have to get a crew in there tonight so the light is good. So I called the city, and the fire department didn't have a big tanker, but the city did, and they had a big tanker truck that held somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 gallons of water. And I said, could you take it to the lighthouse? And they said, sure. And they brought it out to the lighthouse, and we took the hoses, and we went clear to the top of the lighthouse here, and we took the hoses, and we just put on a light, and we started spraying water down, and we used over 3,000 gallons of water. We sprayed down through the lighthouse, and we had the crew pushing it with squeegees, pushing it out the front door, and then we had to shine the lens up, and by the time it got dark, I had the lens all shined up, ready to go, so it could be seen 20 miles at sea. And now, here the lighthouse now is all cleaned up. We had to wipe it on down, and then we just left it. And they hired a crew that came in at that time, and they charged them $10,000 to repaint the lighthouse. A few years later, they wanted to paint the lighthouse and paint it up like it is now, all pretty. They couldn't. When we painted the lighthouse, we took a line, and we went up the top of the lighthouse, and we threw the line off down here, and we made a bosun chair, and we put a man in a bosun chair. We tied the other end to the Jeep, and we had a block and tackle up at the top where it was made fast, and the Jeep would back up, and they would pull the man up and down as we went around the lighthouse, and that's how we painted it. Nowadays they have to build a scaffold, and it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to build this scaffold to go around the lighthouse, and then they paint it up. I think it cost somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to paint the lighthouse the last time.